episode of Lead the Machine podcast, where today's leaders and tomorrow's talk about the human side of AI at work. I'm your host, Kirsten Marr, and it's terrific to have today's guest on Lead the Machine, Manny Rodriguez, someone I consider a bold and authentic leader. Manny is the Chief Marketing, Experience, and Customer Officer at UC Health, a nationally recognized nonprofit health system with $9 billion in operating revenue, more than 35,000 employees, and over 200 clinic locations across Colorado, southern Wyoming, and western Nebraska. But his impact goes far beyond titles and numbers. Since joining UC Health in 2015, Manny has reimagined what it means to lead with both innovation and empathy. He's not just driving brand strategy, he's shaping how people experience care, how employees adapt in an AI-driven world, and how marketing becomes a force for trust in complex industries. His leadership has connected UC Health to fans through premier sponsorships with the major Denver sports teams, the Broncos, Nuggets, Rockies, Avalanche, and Mammoth, using sports not just for visibility, but for storytelling with purpose. A veteran of the healthcare, energy, finance, and sports sectors, Manny's career spans roles at Santander Bank, NRG Energy, Reliant, and nearly 2 decades in pharma marketing at companies like Johnson & Johnson, Abbott, and Bristol Myers Squibb. He's known for building brands from the ground up and for coaching teams through disruption, not around it. In a time when AI is accelerating change across every role, Manny is focused on co-creating roles. He's enabling employees to redefine their jobs before disruption forces them to, encouraging a mindset of continuous reinvention. Because rather than resigning to AI replacing you, it can elevate you when used with intention. Manny is a leukemia survivor, public speaker, and active community leader, serving on the boards of the Denver Center for Performing Arts, Boy Scouts of America, and the Colorado Rapids Youth Soccer Club. He also plays a key role in shaping Denver's presence on the global stage through his leadership on the 2026 World Cup host city bid committee. Manny's leadership reflects what Lead the Machine stands for: transformation, human-centered innovation, and a deep belief that the future belongs to those willing to reinvent again and again. Manny and I met through the Chief Marketing Officer, or CMO Club, about 8 or 9 years ago. Manny is the president of the Denver chapter for the club. We both share a passion for the field of marketing and what marketers bring to the table in leading company vision and strategy. So Manny, I'm going to ask you in just a minute to share how you found your way into marketing. For me, it actually started at the grand old age of 13 when I decided to dedicate my life to communication, because I believe that most of the world's problems came down to poor communication. So I became an English lit major, worked in publishing, found my way into marketing for the tech sector, and then executive leadership. So Manny, before we dive into all things AI, tell us how you began in marketing and what you think the discipline brings to a company's overall success.
Well, first of all, thank you for the introduction. I think I'm going to have to bring you with me anytime I do a speaking engagement because that was pretty impressive. So thank you for that. My marketing journey is interesting. I'm not a classically trained marketer at all. In fact, I have an undergraduate degree in finance and a graduate degree in international business and economics. So I spent probably the first 8 years of my career in finance. And when I was at Sharing, well, normally the finance group sits within finance, right? So you support marketing or you support operations or whatever group you support, but you sit within the marketing organization. When I was at Sharing, I was a finance person supporting Dr. Scholl's, and I got the opportunity to sit within the group that I supported in marketing. So as I was progressing in my career and looking at the future of my career, no offense to CFOs, but I realized I don't want to be that. Right. So I was in this weird place of, here's what I'm classically trained to do. It's not what I want to do. I'm within this marketing organization and I found passion in that. And our director at the time, director of marketing, was a classically trained CPA. And I asked him how he made the transition. And he said, well, he quit being a CPA and he went to graduate school to become a marketer. and we had a conversation, and that led into him presenting me with an opportunity to start my career over. I went from being a senior manager in marketing in finance to taking a multiple level demotion to become an assistant product manager. And that's how my career started. In fact, my very first job was associate product manager on the Corn Callus and Bunion business. Very sexy,
Nice
sexy role.
product line.
But yeah, I was at the age of 28 or so, I restarted my career, and something that I'm very proud of and happy that I did, and I've never looked back.
Yeah, I know. I'm always going to be a marketer at heart, so it's in me, right?
It's a good example a lot to say that, careers are not linear. Very few people have a linear career, right?
Oh, yeah. When I introduce myself, I say, "Listen, I'm running data analytics business, and I came to that through an English lit degree. You explained to me how I got there." You know, but that's the fun, right? That's the fun of what we get to experience. So let's dive in a little bit more here. And I mean, you've been in healthcare here for a long time now, and I mean, AI is going to touch every industry, but one of the industries that is talked about a lot in terms of pretty monumental impact is healthcare. Um, but part of what I like to bring to this podcast is people who have experience, as you do, working and leading through major tech innovations, shifts in multiple industries. Maybe you can share just a couple of previous examples, and how you kind of bring that perspective to the transformation that's happening in healthcare right now.
You're basically saying because I'm old, I have
And me,
this
I'm old too, so yes, I am calling us both seasoned.
season. I
Seasoned.
like veterans, right? Season. Uh, yeah, the biggest impact I think in my career was email. Right. I mean, like, so I'm going back to 1990, I guess, where, all of a sudden one day you get this communication, right, where someone says, we're going to roll out this email platform, and they load it in your computer, and you're like, what is this thing, right? And, you know, I don't remember how long it took, but after that, it was just, okay, this is amazing. Because I don't know if you remember, what I kind of miss is that big yellow envelope. That's how we used to communicate, right? You'd write some kind of, communication, you'd put in that big yellow envelope, and then you start crossing off the little names, and you get to there's like 100 and something names on the thing, and then all of a sudden you're last cross off, and you got to find a new envelope. But that's kind of how you
Not
communicate,
o not only do I remember those, but when we first got email, it was only internal because
right?
everyone was afraid to make it external. So you had email, but you could only talk to people in the company. But that yellow envelope, you lived for that little icon.
You live for that. So you had this advent of email. The good part about it is you were able to capture a lot more things and to communicate to more people. Like, imagine if you needed to communicate to five people. In the past, I'd have to walk to five different offices. If they're in a different building, it became a little bit harder. You had to try and catch people on the phone, which honestly, I'm looking at my phone right now. I can't remember the last time I've actually picked up that phone. And when it does ring, it's a little weird because I'm like, why is somebody calling me? Um,
You
and
mean your
email,
desk phone? Your desk phone? Yeah.
like, I don't even know what the number of the desk phone is actually, but it allowed for rapid communication. It allowed for sharing of ideas. It allowed for attaching of documents. And it also allowed for documentation of conversations, right? So there's a great way to have a conversation, send an email saying, hey, Kristen, you know, this is what we talked about, just documenting it, right? So it expanded the world of how we did business. And then obviously the advent of the internet, right? Uh, back when I graduated college in '89, it was just starting to become a thing, right? And the ability to be connected globally, on a global scale was pretty amazing, right? And now you can't imagine living without it, right? In fact, I think we're all pretty much addicted to it, right? But imagine in a world where that was so new, people were afraid to use it almost, right? And that's kind of where I see AI right now. You know, Somebody made a quote at this AI conference that I was at is, AI has been a party for a while, and we're all late to the party. We're all rushing to the party right now.
Yeah, well, the internet was developed in the 50s, didn't become, till the late 90s. I mean, everything, some things an overnight success. It's been around longer than people think. So as we get into what's different about AI and how do we keep the human, I'm really interested on your take. How do we keep the human with AI? Something that occurred to me when you were talking about email was while it was great, it also started, and social media is like the poster child of this, but email, it started with the I'm reading between the lines of what you're saying to me and the miscommunication as well. So it
Oh,
was
for sure.
awesome for communication, but it also, I didn't mean that. I wrote this, I didn't write so that started kind of that misinterpretation of written word and email, which we see in social media, which I know we see in AI, but maybe you can say something about that. But also just your perspective on how we keep the human in AI in an AI world.
Yeah, you're actually giving me some, flashbacks of, also the mistaken reply all. When you mean to reply to one person, you reply to 30 people. Um, that also becomes a challenge. The misinterpretation and the tone, right? Some people can be really, really friendly in conversation and have more aggressive tone over email. It doesn't mean they're being aggressive. It's just how they're writing, and it's very easy to misinterpret that. I think AI brings different challenges. And my big fear in AI is because it is so rapid, so fast, is are we going to be able to think critically in the future? Right? That is a big concern of mine is, if I can go on an AI platform and have everything answered for me, or have an email written for me, or have a contract reviewed, all those things, what's it going to do to the human brain? Is the human brain going to be able to solve the most basic problems when it doesn't need to,
Will
right?
it atrophy?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a perfect example is, I played around with an old contract and an addendum, and I basically loaded the contract and loaded the addendum in, and I asked AI to read them, look for differences. And this was probably a 30, 40 page contract. And I scanned it and I didn't see any differences to worry about. But AI was like, look at, line item 5.5, 1A. And I completely missed that, right? Which is great
Mhm.
when you get to the point of the comfort of, hey, I'm just going to have AI do everything for me. You get into this tricky place of like, are you going to be able to think critically, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that is something that's a little concerning to me. I recently heard a speaker back over the summer talk about AI, and he said today everybody uses AI incorrectly. They use AI as Google, as basically a search engine, versus using AI as an assistant, right? If you're a writer, have AI be your editor. If you're creative, have AI double check your work, or whatever those things are. But the spirit of use AI as an assistant versus you using AI to do the work for you. At a recent conference I was at, actually, my favorite quote of the whole event was leverage AI to multiply human impact while minimizing human failure points. That was pretty interesting to me, with the spirit of how can we help AI um, wherever we have weaknesses, right, and enhance that and help, offset our weaknesses, but we still drive it, we still lead it. In that same AI conference, they had this keynote that was talking about Hollywood and this fear of AI replacing actors with
Yeah.
voice and movies and animatics, et cetera. And they had an actor who, like, for the life of me, I can't remember his name, but he was talking about how he's a producer, he's a director, and he's a really creative person. He's got brilliant ideas. He just doesn't know how to bring them to life, right? So whenever he would pitch an idea to a studio, right, you usually don't get an opportunity to get in front of an executive. You get, in front of a lower level person. He pitches the idea. Then he's relying on this lower level person to take notes and communicate his thoughts, his ideas, his passions to some executive. Right now, he uses AI to basically bring all his ideas, his passions, his thought to life. And now he's got an amazing presentation that he gives to somebody, then they can take that presentation and present it on his behalf. But it's all him, and AI helped him bring it to life. So his weaknesses basically drawing and grafix, and AI is his assistant in that
Yeah.
scenario.
And
Uh,
that's the right way to think about it, right? I mean,
yeah,
I
100%.
still want I still want to create my own things. I don't ever want to give up the beauty of creating things. But man, am I having fun playing with, I'm using ChatGPT to play with things and how I talk about things, and it's an up leveling to me. But I don't like tell it to create it for me. Like I
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah, if we can think about AI as if you're a writer, AI is your editor,
yeah,
right?
yes,
If you're a coach, AI is your assistant coach, right? It's the spirit of how does it help me? How does it challenge me? I often say that I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I surround myself by really smart people that make me better. And that's kind of how I see AI, right?
yeah,
It's like, where are my weaknesses and how can I help these AI tools hide my weaknesses or kind of do them for me kind of thing, or redefine what those things are for me, so
yeah.
to speak.
Well, I hope people can kind of take from this, like, just keep creating, keep building, do the hard stuff, and then have it help you. Because you're right, like what's left if you just let it do it? You'll just sound like everyone else. Everyone's Father's Day card was the same. Like it's not going to work out in the long run if you do it that way.
No, not only that, but it's funny. I have a coworker that we just launched Copilot in the office, and some of us have the licenses, and my coworker and I do. So we decided that moving forward, every email we write each other, we're not going to write. Copilot's going to write. And it's funny because you read it and you're like, oh my God, that's not me at all, right? Uh, and he'll send me emails. I'm like, dude, this isn't you at all, right? If you continue to do that, it takes away your personality,
Yeah,
right? And I know there's tools to help it kind of like memorize who you are and kind of learn and mimic and copy, but it's still not who you are,
no,
right? Like, I have this thing, and my team knows it very well, is whenever we get something approved or whenever we do something really, really cool, instead of writing a very long congratulatory email, I'll just reply with uh, all in capital letters and exclamation point, boom, right? And everybody knows that my response to that is, this is freaking amazing, right? But I don't have to write this very long email. Or when somebody sends me a note seeking approval for something, my response is giddy up, right? And that's the spirit of it, let's go. And everybody knows that's me. Can you imagine if I started using AI to they'll be like, did you just have a stroke? What's going on, right? Yeah, it takes away your personality, and there's certain unique things to people that um, come through in their personality and come through in their writing, and AI will never replace that, right? At
it'll
least,
never replace that. So let's circle back to healthcare because there's nothing more human than healthcare, and everybody experiences healthcare. And so, how do you see AI playing out right now in clinical settings? And what do you think is going to happen over the next, call it 12 to 18 months?
yeah. I mean, just think about where AI is evolving and really helping is your interaction with a doctor today, right? So I'm your physician, and the first thing I say to you is, hey, I want to take some notes. So we're no longer doing this. I'm now doing this, right? So your conversation with me is with the side of my head or the back of my head,
Mhm.
right? And then there's occasional shifting back and forth versus, right now there's a lot of platforms that allow me to have this interaction with you, and AI is taking notes and it's capturing all these notes, right? And that is really freeing up my time, right, to converse with you, to be human with you, depending on what the situation is, to have a conversation with you, an empathetic conversation, uh, versus worrying about notes, right? Also, at the end of the day, as a physician, if I have to go back and read notes, if I have to go back and adjust notes or whatever those things are, this platform is now doing that for me, right? So it's enabling me to have a more human connection with a patient, right? I think in the next year or two, um, most X-rays will probably be read somehow or another through an AI model, right? I don't think you'll ever, well, I don't know if I should ever, at some point, you probably will never have a person read an X-ray, right? It'll probably be read, imaging will be read by some form of AI. we're looking in my interpretive services group is like, that you can't lose a human connection of interpretation, but where does it make sense to have AI do an interpretation, right? At a check-in or at a quick conversation or a quick voicemail, so I can free up my folks to have more one-on-one conversations with people. So we're looking at a lot of different areas of that. We've
How
got
are
a
doctors responding?
there's mixed with everything, right? Some people are early adopters and they're all in that they think is great, and there's others who are very suspicious, you know. So it's just a mix. It depends, I guess, on their experience, how they were trained, what's important to them, right? So it's very, very different across the board.
Yeah, I can assume that it is. Some will lean in. There's always the early adopters. Those in the middle want to wait and see. Is this a flavor of the month? I would just say AI is not a flavor of the month. Like it's here.
It's here. It's here to stay. Yeah, and I always say, it's like there's 10% who are all in early, there's 10% who are the never adopters, and there's 80% who are like, hey, I'm in, but I'm nervous. I want to wait and see what happens, kind of thing. Um, so I don't think it's any different with this. That's why I think the notion of this party's been around. We're all late to the party, and now we're scrambling to get to the party, right?
So this isn't AI, but this is something because I'm also a patient with UC Health. I go there for my medical needs too. So one thing that, and I'm sure you had a part in launching this that was totally new to me, and it wasn't AI, but I can see how AI can drive this, was that in when you go to UC Health and you have test results, you don't have to wait for the doctor to tell you. You guys just put it in the patient portal and then and release it as soon as the doctor gets it, the patient also gets it, which I found really refreshing. And then the doctor's reaching out if there's something, right, whatever that you need to sort of talk about. So um, how do you see AI kind of driving more even of that transparency? And I know in talking to you before, I think your wife had an experience about how AI can kind of bring things to light really fast.
Yeah, I mean, so my wife was having some symptoms with something and she couldn't get an appointment for a couple days. So, she loaded all her symptoms into AI and then it gave her, a specific results diagnosis. And then when she was able to see her doctor, the diagnosis was almost word for word, right? And she jokes around, she's like, I could have saved my $40 copay. Um, the difficulty there is, AI is not a doctor, right? AI does make mistakes, right? Um, there are a lot of things that AI will publish which is not factual, so there is a danger there, right? There's nothing like speaking to someone who has the data, the research, and all that. AI will evolve and AI will get better, but AI to this day still makes mistakes. I mean, I've put stuff into ChatGPT and it gives me results, and you're like, well, that's not right. And then you correct it, and it'll be like, oh, yes, you're correct. Sorry for the mistake,
Oh,
kind
it
of thing.
always compliments you.
Supplement, yeah. Um, so, that's where you have to be really, really careful. It's just like, they'll tell you never Google your symptoms because it's always going to tell you something you don't want to hear,
I
right?
was
So,
just gonna say like WebMD, like I went to WebMD. I know what I have.
yeah, it is amazing though how in this scenario, the AI answer and the physician answer was identical, but there is a risk there that, you know, AI can tell you something that's not necessarily the case, and then it creates anxiety and stress and other things that can happen until you know the actual truth, right? And I think AI has gotten better of now saying, "Hey, I'm not a doctor," kind of thing, right? And encouraging you to seek, right? Um, but yeah, there's this app my son used that's called Memento, and basically allows you to track every sporting event you've ever gone to, right? And my son and I go to a lot of sporting events, and I've used that. We'll be like, yeah, we went to this game. We don't have a ticket, but I know it was in March, and I know it was in 20 whatever year, and I know what teams were playing, but I don't know the date. So you go into AI and you put that information, it gives you a date, and you're like, well, that doesn't sound right. And then you search it and you realize it's this date. And then you go to ChatGPT and you're like, hey, wasn't it actually on March 14th? They're like, oh yeah, sorry for the mistake, kind of thing, right? So it's still not 100% accurate. So you have to, proceed with caution, kind of thing.
So how do those conversations then go in healthcare, knowing all of that? And I think you were, talking about just even other things that you see kind of coming, but that has to be a pretty big conversation around the healthcare boardroom table about, well, where AI can help and where it's wrong, and how to navigate that through what matters to people, which is their health. I mean, it's very personal.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the spirit of AI is you don't just look at a tool and go all in on the tool, right? I mean, if there's a specific tool, even in writing notes, right? I mean, there's a lot of testing that happens. It doesn't get rolled out broadly. It gets rolled out to a specific group. There's some testing done, it's analyzed, and then it's kind of the spirit of is it ready for prime time kind of thing, right? There's no such thing as like, hey, this is great tool. Let's trust it wholeheartedly. Let's roll it out and hope it works, right? There's a lot of vetting and testing that happens, right? And there's a lot of companies out there doing the same thing.
Yeah.
At this AI conference I was at, on the board, they had well north of 100 companies that were all doing very similar things, which my guess is in the next 5 to 10 years, those companies will be
Consolidate on, like some will make it, some won't.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not an all-in thing. It's there's a lot of testing that's being done, right? At the end of the day, there's a keynote speaker that's saying, um, AI might be smarter than humans in the next 10 to 30 years, but they're not there yet. It's not there yet. It's constantly learning and evolving and changing. It's just not there yet.
And I don't know what you think, but when I hear this smarter than AI or smarter than humans, and AI will just take us over, or whatever, but some are that doomsday, but just smarter than humans, I still cringe at that a little bit, because they might be able to it might be able to think faster and come to conclusions and connect the dots, but it's never going to have the emotional intelligence to me of a human, um, and the creativity. So I'm always of the camp of, it's not AI versus human, it's what can it be together.
Well, 100%, but it depends on how people use it, right? So,
Yeah.
and this leads to a bigger discussion around the education system, right? At some point, the education system is going to have to adapt to how do you integrate AI into the education system. Right now, it's don't use it, right? Right now, it's don't use it, and you are punished and penalized for using it, right? Um, but at some point, and this is my comment earlier on about critical thinking, but if we get to the point where we're no longer thinking critically, there is a huge risk of, right, AI being smarter because we can no longer have a personality or think critically or think for ourselves if AI is doing it for us, right? So
And,
this
and
is,
I think it's short-sighted to say don't use it, because your students are going to need to be fluent in AI in their first job to keep their, because entry-level jobs, right, are the ones kind of most at risk there. How are you serving your students to say don't use instead of let's talk about how to use?
yeah, I was talking to a CMO once and she said in her interviews, her first question is around AI, and she won't hire anybody who's not proficient in AI. That's just the mindset of like, right? So again, at some point, the education system is going to have to embrace AI and figure out how to incorporate AI in learning.
Yeah, and we're all going to maybe talking a little bit more about just overall workforce changes. We all have to kind of look at how our roles are going to adapt. And I know you have said, when we've chatted, people need to now be thinking about reinventing themselves, maybe every 6 months. That maybe used to be a year or 18 months, which isn't all that long. But what does that actually look like for you and inside your teams?
Yeah, I mean, think about that, right? So, you know, in your career, you've changed your career several times, but
Mm.
you identify yourself as X, right? Like I identify myself as a marketer. And um, as we move forward, the spirit is that you're no longer going to be identified by a marketer or this thing that, man, I've been a marketer for 30 plus years, or I've been in finance for 40 years, or whatever it is, or I've been in real estate for 20 plus years. You're moving forward, you're going to be judged on your ability to adapt, right? And how adaptable are you to changes? And the more adaptable you are, um, kind of a utility player, right? The more able you are to do multiple things and change and shift, is the more successful you're going to be, right? So within my team, you know, we fully embrace the spirit of AI is here and AI is a tool. And a couple months ago, we created a task force, and there's probably 20 plus people on this task force. And it's the spirit of these are people from across my entire organization and group, across different disciplines, across different levels. And it's them basically saying, what is AI going to look like in the future for us? And kind of with the idea of redefining their roles so it's not done to them, right? Because it'd be really easy for somebody to say, hey, let's just have AI write every press release and get rid of the PR team. Well, that's not reality, right? So how do we redefine the work we do and who we are for somebody who doesn't really know the space defines it for us, right? It's very easy to say, well, just have AI do the video, or just have AI write the press release, or just have AI write the script. Yeah, but is that really the organization we want to be in? That is that the right thing for how we drive the organization moving forward? So our team's been working really, really hard. In fact, this weekend I got a kind of the first draft of mission statement, the goals, the objectives, what do we want to do, how do we want to become, and it's all driven from the bottom up, which is pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. So without giving away too much of whatever, but what are some of the, ideas that people are kind of coming up with and like turning their creative brain on to think through?
Yeah, actually, I have a couple of them that I put down here. I mean, like just sponsorships, we have a very sophisticated ROI tool that we spend hours putting together, right? Basically looking at our contract, analyzing our assets, analyzing the performance, and saying, hey, if we spent $1 on this partnership, what are we getting in return? And if our goal is a 3-to-1 return and we're at 2-to-1, what do we do? How do we go back to our partners to do that, right? And it takes hours, sometimes months to do this stuff. How can we create it? How can we use AI to kind of do that for us? Now, the challenge is there is, do you really want to start loading contracts and all that stuff into an AI model so it goes out into the free world, right?
No,
Uh,
no, you want it in your own private
right.
yeah, large language model. Yep.
Example, I mean, I manage interpretive service, and one of the things we're looking at is, we have requests for AI, we have requests for interpreters all the time, and we're limited in type of interpreters. Interpreters take time; they have to be scheduled, and when somebody doesn't show up for an appointment, it's now preventing that interpreter, right? Because they block their time, they go and show up to the appointment, person doesn't show up. That interpreter is now not able to help out an interpretation somewhere else. So we're looking at AI tools that basically say, based on a person's um, pattern, can we use predictive AI to say, hey, what are the chances that this person is going to cancel their appointment? And do that in an effort to be more effective, deploy resources better, and realize that the likelihood of this person not showing up is 80%, so we're not even going to send somebody there, we'll send them somewhere else, that kind of thing. Media buying, obviously, right? Our team is looking at what are the different tools out there, because we brought all of our media buying in-house. We don't use agencies, we bring everything in-house. What are the opportunities there to be able to look at our media buying? How do we make it more efficient? We're looking at using AI from a search, sorry, from a paid search, right? So if we put out social media out there and we put some dollars behind it, what's performing? What if we take our top 5 performing things, put it into AI, and figure out what do we do well? How do we make them even better performing? So there's a lot of different areas that we do stuff. Obviously, on a creative perspective, right? How can AI help my creative team be more effective? In PR, we're looking at, if we can start teaching AI tone and voice of an executive, does AI take a first step at a newsletter, right? And do it, in a couple of minutes versus hours, and then have our folks go in and change the tone,
Make it better. Yeah.
right? So those are a lot of different things that our folks are doing. Um, on video production, we're looking at opportunities. Um, where do we, we create so much content here, and it takes hours and hours and months sometimes of creative process, video production, etc. What are the areas that you want people doing it, and where are the areas where, hey, this is a really simple education video or simple video that we can have AI help us put it together, right? So we can free up time for other people to do other things. And that's the spirit of how do we use AI to free up people to do more meaningful, more strategic things than just cranking stuff out, because we find ourselves in the world now of just cranking stuff out.
Yeah. So I mean, it's this whole notion that we've been talking about, which is up leveling. One of the things that you said though, um, was, like for media buying. Well, boy, doesn't it put the vendor in a hot seat where they have to up level because you can analyze, more of what you're getting, or the people you have sponsorship contracts, right? So your ability to analyze faster and come back and talk about ROI also means they better be doing things on their end and upping their game. So if it's done with that kind of intention, everyone should be upping their game to a certain degree.
No, absolutely. And again, part of the spirit is, especially within the world that we live in, and how big we've grown as an organization, and the teams haven't gotten bigger, right? They're just grinding more. And if we can free up people to grind less and be more strategic, be more innovative, I mean, that's a win for everybody, right? Because we do find ourselves as the organization grows that we're just spending a lot of time grinding, right? And just getting tactical stuff done versus really thinking about that big idea, that big project, that big creative exercise, because we're just sometimes so busy grinding, right?
Yeah. So if we think about, just I'm an employee out there today, and if AI can do average, faster than me, what do you think is the new bar for being truly great at your job?
Well, that's where adaptability comes in, right? I mean, I really think it's the spirit of being adaptable, right? So at some point, the reality is that there are certain jobs where AI might be able to do a task faster, quicker, and as accuracy gets better, right? So then, okay, how adaptable are you now, as I like to say, to not grind, but to be able to think a little bit more strategically, or figure out how to innovate your role, or redefine what your role is or what you do, right? And that's where I really believe the spirit of adapting, whether it's every 6 months or every year, um, we're going to have that ability to do that. This also is a spirit of, there's a lot of conversation around this notion of being a generalist, right? Where today we're specialists,
Yeah.
right? And we're really honed in on this is my specialty versus in the future, do we go from being specialist to being generalist, right? This notion of because of AI, I'm not going to focus on one singular thing, but I have the ability to focus and be good at multiple things, right? In the spirit of, again, a generalist versus a specialist.
Well, and I think that is a kind of a key point for anyone who's aspiring to leadership. Because if you are going to grow in your career, and if you're going to become a leader, by definition, your world gets broader and broader, not narrower and deeper. You take on more and more of a purview. So it's not bad leadership training in a way.
No, for sure. I mean, you'll see case studies that in most cases, the person that's best at a certain job doesn't make the best leader. They're the best at doing the job, but they're not necessarily the best at leading people to do the job. It's kind of like you could be a great athlete. You might be the best athlete, but you may not be the best coach, right? You might not be the best person to teach people to be the athlete you are, right?
But if you are, so if you're aspiring to be a leader, this is a nice way of thinking about how to learn how to do that, right?
100%. Right. It's the notion of being able to be good at many, many things versus just being an expert in one thing, right?
Yeah. And so let's turn the tables and talk about us seasoned people. What do you think, in this world of AI, versus other tech disruptions? What do you think is required of leaders today that might be the same as past tech disruptions, or is it different in your mind?
Past tech disruptions took time,
Mm.
right? As you said, the internet was around in the 50s and it didn't really become mainstream until late 80s, early 90s. That's not the case now. This is like things are evolving at a pace like we've never seen before, right? Things are evolving on a daily, hourly basis versus on a yearly basis. And this is I'll go all the way back to adaptability. As leaders, we have to, it's going to be harder for us, right? We've been doing things for 20, 30 plus years and we're stubborn in our ways and we were taught a certain way and we grew up a certain way. We have to be really adaptable, probably more so than anybody, because in order to lead a team with adaptability, it's going to be really difficult for me if I'm not adaptable myself, right? And I think as, seasoned people, it's sometimes harder,
Yeah.
right? It's really hard to, I'll say, is, beat bad habits out of us, right? If we are so used to, and, think of your morning routine, right? That won't work in this environment, right? We're going to have to be able to pivot and switch and change, right? Uh,
Yeah, things are, you can't even, things are moving in like 2 months ago. We weren't talking about this. Now we are talking about this. Like it is so fast. Most of
yeah,
us are not really prepped for that.
this is no joke. My wife and I go out to dinner a lot, about to lunch a lot, and inevitably, as you start, hearing conversations around you, every time we go out, somebody somewhere around us is having a conversation around AI. It is incredible, right? Um, the unfortunate part of it is most of those conversations are on the fear-based side of like, oh, what's going to happen to my job? What's going to happen to my kids? What's going to happen to this? You very rarely hear conversations around excitement of where AI can go. So there is this fear thing that I think, you know, a seasoned people can help people through is like, if done correctly, if embraced the right way, this is going to enhance and make everybody's life better. Now, that said, there's always the bad actor, right? And I think compliance and regulations are going to be super important. There's been bad actors with the advent of, texting, and there's been bad actors with the advent of, email. There's bad actors with internet and all that stuff. So bad actors
Social
are,
social media. Social media is a great case in point.
there's always going to be bad actors who are going to want to use these tools in a way that's not for good. But you know, as we look to move forward and we embrace change, I think people start realizing there's a lot of great things that can happen here, right?
My take on it is, listen, you can't get away with all, get rid of all the bad stuff. It's gonna happen. But man, more bad stuff can happen if you don't lean in and figure out how to define it in your industry and your whatever, passion that you have. Like get in there and help define it for the good that it can be.
Yeah, I mean, we have our chief innovation officer here. He loves to say, AI won't replace doctors. AI will replace doctors who don't embrace AI. Right? It's the spirit of those physicians who embrace this will go on to, lead and do bigger things, and those who fight it will be the ones that find themselves not in the mix.
Yeah.
Right?
I think, you again, I talk a lot on this podcast about the analogies to the internet, but that happened in the internet. Everyone said print is dead. Well, print isn't dead, but boy, it's a lot different and it's not what it was. But content providers figured out, some did, some didn't, how to transition. Brick and mortar, same. Some figured out how to have an online strategy, some didn't, right? You either the Silicon Valley phrase, adapt or die, right?
Well, 100%. I mean, I actually saw a podcast yesterday, as a matter of fact, where they were talking about the former CEO of Netflix, and they were talking about the whole Netflix um,
Blockbuster.
blockbuster battle. And there's a perfect example of, he shared something that I actually had forgotten is that, Netflix, when they went to Blockbuster to be bought, they were $50 million in the hole, right? They were ready to, shut down, and Blockbuster turned them away. And now Netflix is trading at $1,200, $1,300 a share. I mean, it is just an amazing thing of, adapt or die kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, Netflix embraced technology, Blockbuster didn't, right? By the time they figured it out.
Well, Blockbuster said Netflix is not our competitor. Such a blind spot. Same with Kodak. They actually invented the digital camera,
Right.
and then they said put it in a drawer, and they had so much groupthink in that corporate culture that they destroyed one of America's most iconic brands by not, they could have let it.
And that's just, again, it gets back to adaptability, right? And if we don't adapt, if we don't learn to adapt, if we are so hung up on our ways and our routines, we're going to be left behind, right? And it's incumbent on the seasoned people to have to be the ones who are more flexible in their adaptability because it's harder, right? It's
Oh.
harder when you've done the same thing for a decade or more, right? It's really hard to pivot.
And I think there's this huge opportunity maybe for better generational communication and learning from each other. So some of the research I've been doing shows that there are actually a lot of people in Gen Z very apprehensive about AI at work because they're just starting out and those entry-level jobs can be the ones often targeted for layoffs. And with the intense focus on profitability, companies are doing more layoffs, right? And especially as they're all coming out of school. On the flip side, if they are digital natives where we're digital immigrants, they can do a lot to teach a flexible, seasoned leader, how this stuff can actually work. There's so much cross sharing and cross learning if we can figure
Yeah,
out that dialogue within companies.
100%. And that's why we're looking at the spirit of like change from below, right? It's the spirit of like, and the other part is not only change from below, but realize that the minute we implement this, it's wrong, right? The minute we implement things are changing so much, it's wrong. So it's the spirit of knowing that we spent all this time to create change. We're now in a place to make change, but now we're already wrong. We have to get ready for the next shift of change, right? It's this constant notion of redefining the roles, right? And having the flexibility to pivot and change, right? Which honestly, it's really hard. Especially the bigger the organization is, the harder it becomes.
Oh, I mean, to operationalize that fast, I mean, companies aren't really built for that.
Yeah, and part of the spirit is to have, the leadership, ability to be able to say, hey, we're going to have to pivot and let's just do it, right?
Mhm.
Um, and my philosophy is anytime we've done a restructure or a reorg or made leadership changes or whatever, I always say the minute we implement it, it's wrong,
Yeah.
right? Because it's just the reality of how things shift, right? And that was in the past where things didn't shift as quickly, but now it's, as we're thinking about it, it's changing, right? We're literally sitting here saying, hey, this is how we move forward. And tomorrow we're like, oh, this new thing just happened. Maybe we should move forward a different way. It's pretty amazing.
It
Yeah.
is. And how do you think about that in such a heavily regulated industry like healthcare?
Well, I mean, from our perspective, right, I don't look at what we do as healthcare. I look at what we do as marketing, right? And I'm of the camp of, yes, you got to understand regulations, and yes, you got to understand the do's and don'ts. But at the end of the day, the marketing job doesn't change, right? What we do and what our core focus is doesn't change, and that's what we're focused on, right? I mean, in fact, I've never hired, and I pause when I said it to think, but yeah, I've never hired anybody from healthcare. I've been here a decade now, and everyone I've hired is from a different industry, right? Because at the end of the day, is what I'm looking for is the best marketer,
Yeah.
not the best healthcare marketer, right? Because they're going to bring different ideas. I've hired people from sports teams. I've hired people from landscaping companies. I've hired people from energy companies. I've hired people from agencies. I've hired people from entertainment companies, from a lot of different places that bring a lot of different viewpoints, which I think helps us be adaptable because if we were all from healthcare, I think we would struggle turning the ship.
Mhm.
but given we're from a lot of different industries, a lot of different perspectives,
There is
we have
no we've always done it this way because they're coming in from a new place.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's on the analytics front, Progressive. Um, and since I worked in, for so long in property casualty insurance, Progressive is known for, yes, they have insurance experts that need to run different parts of the business, but they're very well known for not wanting to hire people out of the industry when it comes to how they innovated. I mean, they're one of the most sophisticated analytics companies. I don't care what industry you're in. I mean, they're at the top. And they did it by not bringing in people who had insurance expertise. They went just like you did, just outside to bring in new thinking, fresh thinking. Where were the best data analytics people they could get to drive a business in a different way? And their success speaks to that.
That's the beauty of diversity of thought, right? It's the spirit of someone can take an experience from a different industry and figure out how to apply it here. You mentioned the CMO club earlier. One of the best conversations I ever had with somebody at a CMO club lunch was somebody who worked for a hotel chain, right? We started talking, and I realized that staying in a hotel and staying in a hospital room at the end of the day are very, very similar,
That's interesting.
right? And her and I learned a lot in terms of like how they promote, a hotel stay versus how we promote the hospital. And again, it's like you're sleeping in a bed, you have access to food, you
Yeah.
want clean sheets, you want a clean room, you want a clean bathroom, you want an easy check and easy check out. There's a lot of things that are very comparable versus saying, ooh, hospital, big, bad, scary thing. Ooh, hotel, really cool, fun thing, right? But there was so much cross learning that had we not just sat down and started, having a conversation, I would have never thought of it that way. And that was just a very interesting learning experience for me to go, wow, there's a lot of similarities that we can learn something from these guys.
What, if any, changes did you make after that conversation?
It was more of the spirit of how we approach things,
Mhm.
right? We approach things from a hospitality perspective versus from a clinical perspective, right? Which is very different,
Yeah.
right? Um, so yeah, and even in the spirit of, you know, hospitality, um, the notion of wanting to have a relationship with the person just to check in or whatever. One of the simple you asked about changes. One of the simple changes we made at one point was, when you walk into a room, you're very clinical and you go about doing this stuff and then you leave versus before you leave, just say, Mrs. Jones, is there anything else I can do for you before I leave? And the answer is usually no, but it's the spirit of like, hey, you just asked me something about do I need something, do you care about me kind of thing, right? Versus just a very transactional thing. Um, the other thing is the spirit of we often walk into a room and just focus on the patient, and maybe there's a loved one in the patient. Introduce yourself to the loved one, have a dialogue with the loved one, right? And it just creates a little bit different dynamic than a very transactional thing, which is, you know, just something cool and different, right?
So if we go back to our teams don't get bigger, but the workload gets bigger and we're grinding so much, here's a perfect opportunity to think, how can AI take away some of those tasks so I can focus on that kind of thing, right? In my job, in my industry, for my company.
100%. It's just the spirit of, again, if you use AI as an assistant,
Mhm.
right, or an editor, a partner, um, someone to, bounce ideas off of kind of thing, versus a replacement, it's going to really enhance the things that you do, right?
Yeah, don't lose the you in that. I think we're both like really strong on this point.
Don't use the you in that. Like I said,
Yeah.
and a colleague and I, we just continue to use AI to write our emails, and we laugh because it's very formal and very stiff, and it's just not you, right? And
And a
there's
lot of M dashes, right? AI writes everything. I don't know why it does that. Like, why does it hate the comma? I don't understand why it hates the comma.
yeah, the beauty of, you've heard this said before, the beauty of you, there's only one,
Yeah.
embrace that, right? Embrace the uniqueness that is you, and
Yeah.
why use AI to replace that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And there should be so much more opportunity for that if we're thinking about it in those terms and try to negate what bad can happen from it, at least in your purview. You can't stop it all, but you have a certain purview that you work on every day. Be part of making it great, right? And mitigate
Yeah,
the bad stuff.
yeah, the critical thinking does worry me a little bit. This is going back to the email world. I once had somebody walk into my office and they're like, "Hey, I need your help. I've been emailing this person and they're not responding to my emails. I can see they're in their office right now. Why aren't they responding to my emails?" So I could see this person from my office in their office. And I'm like, "They're in their office." And she's like, "I know. Why won't she respond to my emails?" And it took like 3 or 4 of those exchanges for the person to realize maybe I should just walk into the office, right? And it was mind-boggling to me that this person got so used to the email conversation that they lost sight of the fact of, well, I'm just going to walk in the office and go, "Hey, just want to make sure you got my email. Can we talk about it really, really quick?" Right? Um, but they recognized the person was in the office, but didn't put two and two together to say, "Hey, they're not responding to emails, but maybe I should just go talk to them." Right? And that's my fear of AI, that we get down the path of that example becomes significantly more exaggerated, right? And we
Yeah,
lose
like
it.
with texting, we worry our young people forget how to spell because they write and text it, it's not grammar.
Yeah, I mean, I have a 15-year-old son, and I don't think they ever call each other. They'll text and wait for somebody to respond versus like just pick up the phone, right?
Yeah.
It's just not a thing.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, this has been such a great conversation. What haven't we covered that you would really like to cover um, around all things sort of AI and where you see things going?
yeah, I mean, one of the big things, as my team is thinking about how to redefine themselves, is
Hmm.
really important to set guidelines, right? Set a framework, set guidelines. I'm not even talking about organizational compliance, but for us and guidelines, we're looking at how our brand voices and where AI fits into defining the brand voice. Do we need to make tweaks to our brand voice to incorporate AI or not? So it's part of the spirit of don't just embrace AI blindly. Understand that there are implications and think through what those implications are and what it could mean for your brand. And
Hmm.
make sure that as you're defining your AI strategy, make sure that it's either aligned with your brand strategy, or if you have to adapt your brand strategy, make sure they're done collectively versus just blindly embracing AI because it's kind of the thing to do.
Yeah. Because it can really wipe away. I mean, it takes so long to build up a brand and it can be wiped away, I mean, really fast by a lot of things, but boy, could AI really do that.
Yeah, and that's a very critical piece of this, and that's one of the things that, as we're going down this journey of redefining what we're doing, is we can't lose sight of, at the end of the day, our most important asset is our brand,
Yeah.
right? And then how do we make sure that we're protecting, enhancing, and incorporating the things we do into this brand voice? And if we have to make some changes, let's do that thoughtfully.
A good brand is authentic, it's
Correct.
specific, right? It's differentiated, and AI is not there. AI is not going to carry the day on that.
Yeah, I always look at a brand as a person,
Yeah.
right? It's got its personality, it's got its identity, um, and it's unique, and we have to treat it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for all those marketers, creators out there, there's so much opportunity, for you to play in this space if we think about AI as our partner, not as our doer of what we do.
And don't be afraid to play in the space.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, as I tell everyone who's listening to this podcast, this is meant to be a dialogue. So whatever Manny and I sort of talked about that sparked something for you, or you have an experience, to share, please put in the comments so that we can all enjoy your perspective on the wide range of topics that we covered today. And Manny, thanks again for spending time with me today. I really enjoyed the conversation.
No, it was my pleasure. This was fun.
Yeah.